the July 11th Problem Gambling Treatment Providers Monthly Webinar. Thanks for attending today. So today we're going to do just go over a few announcements around what's going on around PGS, and then I'm going to do a presentation. I'm going to do an overview of a presentation that was given at the Focus on the Future conference back in April regarding fair housing for advocates and problem gamblers. That was given by the Oregon Fair Housing Council representative. Okay, so the first announcement, this is like brand spanking new, hasn't been sent out in an email yet, but will be in the near future. We are going to be providing some regional trainings in the next, this fall. And for some of you, you may have remembered when we did regional trainings back in 2014. Maybe you had participated in them. But many of you are new. So basically these regional trainings brings regional problem gambling treatment and prevention and treatment providers together. It helps us strengthen our relationship between the state and you in the communities. It helps strengthen the relationship and the collaboration that it happens at the local level between the problem gambling treatment providers and the prevention specialists, and if your agency executives also choose to come. So we're going to cover some basic statewide stuff depending on the newness of the participants. We'll cover some of the history of our system. We'll cover some of the things that might be changing in the coming year. So we're going to stay together all together in one group in the morning and cover things that are really revolving around our system perspective, things each side of our system, treatment and prevention, should be aware of. And then we're going to break into treatment and prevention specific groups in the afternoon. And that will be led by David, and he's going to discuss how to expand your services in problem gambling and potentially get more clients. You're going to meet others to learn about what they're doing to help those individuals and families dealing with gambling problems. He's going to conduct a GBERT screening training, kind of a train the trainers, to help you learn talking points and approaches to trying to get those within your own agencies to do a better job of identifying problem gamblers, asking the right kind of questions, and making those referral pathways. And then we're going to talk about some new billing codes that will be coming out in 2019, and also talk a little bit about quality improvement and workforce development planning. So those are the few things that will be covered. One thing I did forget to mention when I started today, that David is not present on the call today because I've sent him out into the field with an assignment. He's actually at a training. So I'm taking over for him. This would have been his first webinar, but he will start on August 1st, the next month webinar, and he's really excited about that. And I'm very excited about it too. So you will be hearing his voice next month instead of mine. So to continue on with our regional trainings, lunch is going to be provided along with CEUs for those of you that need that. Registration and the email announcement should go out early next week, and our dates are September 11th in Tillamook, Oregon, and then we have these county assignments. For that particular regional training, we'd like to see Clatsop, Columbia, Tillamook, and Lincoln County treatment and prevention or agency management attend. And then but if you can't attend on the date that is coming to your closer community or the assigned area that we've given you, it's okay. We would just appreciate it if you could maybe attend a different one, because we do think this is very valuable. Last time we did these regional trainings, we got really great reviews on them because it allowed us to really dive into things, because we were a smaller little group of people, so there's like more attention and more learning and cross networking. So September 12th, we're going to be in Albany. And then we're hoping to see the counties of Yamhill, Polk, Marion, Lynn, Benton, and Lane there. September 18th, we're going to be in Baker City, and that would be Umatilla, Union, Wallowa, Baker, and Malheur. September 20th, we're going to be in Bend, and that would be Deschutes, Jefferson, Crook, Klamath, Lake Harney, Gillamora, Wheeler, and Grant counties. And then September 25th, Grants Pass, with Coos, Douglas, Curry, Josephine, and Jackson. And then October 2nd in Lake Oswego with Multnomah, Washington, Clackamas, Mistacama, Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman. So hopefully you can put those on your calendars now or when you get the email later later this month, and then we'll have some registration information so that we know who's coming which location you're coming to, if you're going to come at all. And if you don't, we see that you didn't register, you might be getting an email or phone call from us just for us to touch base and say, what's going on? Why aren't you coming? And also, maybe you need to have a little coaxing from our office to your management or your supervisor. So if you need that, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and request that, because we really do think it's very important for you to attend. So the next thing I just wanted to announce that also hasn't been announced yet is that we're going to be having a spring treatment conference in March. So mark your calendars for that. Not a lot of information I can give you on that except for dates and location. So it's gonna start on March 6th with a pre-conference workshop, and then March 7th and 8th will be our main conference, kind of the similar structure that we always do with a day and a half. So March 8th would be a half day, not a full day. So this is gonna be at the Hallmark Inn Resort in Newport, Oregon, which we had used about a few years ago. And people really seem to like it when we go to the beach or some type of destination location, the beach or the desert. So we went back to the beach, and more information will come later this fall on how to register and actual content. But if you want to mark your calendars now, that would be great also. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now, because there's going to be way more information coming out later about that conference. As always, I just want to once again talk about these problem gambling treatment trainings for clinicians and supervisors. So these online trainings are free. There are 8 different modules that you can take. And please ignore the dates of January 2017 to December 2018 on this slide, because these trainings are still open. So these are really good trainings for new people in the field of problem gambling who haven't been able to get to the Lewis and Clark pre-certification courses. This kind of gives you a broad overview and some information around problem gambling, how it differs from other addictions, and how some of the specialty areas to focus on when providing treatment. So you can take any of these online modules. You could take 1 or 2. You don't have to take all 8. Originally, they were designed to cover the 10 hours that our supervisors need to have in order to meet the Oregon administrative rules, which is why you'll see problem gambling treatment supervision part 1 and part 2 at the bottom. And then as we progressed in making these, we decided that we really wanted to open these open also these online trainings up to anybody, whether it's someone within our field, someone outside of our field, so that they could get some understanding of problem gambling and some of the specific areas that differ. So this is a great thing to promote to those within your agency, not necessarily those that are providing problem gambling treatment, but just maybe looking for some CEU hours for recertification, because like I said, they're free, and we've spent the money to develop them, and we would like to see them get used. So please don't forget that they're out there, even if maybe you don't have interest in them. Please promote them to others in your organizations as an option for free CEUs. I think if more supervisors and managers knew about these online courses and these free CEUs, that they might encourage more of their staff to use this resource, and then which would be great for your agencies, because it's more cost effective to not have to travel to get trainings, and it's also great for us because it gets the learning about problem gambling out there in our behavioral health field outside of our little circle. So other opportunities that we have available for you here at the state, once again, I talk about these every month, is the family learning therapy learning sessions and forums. So we still have 2 more dates this will occur in 2008, July 26th and October 25th. We have the Advanced Families and Problem Gambling Treatment Discussion, with September 27th and November 29th, and there is no requirement in where you need to be to attend any of these. Just because it says advanced doesn't mean you have to be advanced. It's just a little bit of higher level of a discussion than the family therapy learning session, but there is no requirement to attend. And then we have our case training with Chris Anderson, which occurs the second Tuesday of the month through August. So CEUs are provided for all those that attend any of these trainings. And if you are ever interested in looking at what kind of training opportunities we have or the links to them to log in, you can find those on our training calendar on our Oregon PGS webpage. We also have our monthly treatment calls. The next one that we'll be having will be August 1st, so we're not having to do any rescheduling or cancellation. Like I said, David's going to facilitate that call, and he will send an agenda and a login information out to you a couple weeks in advance of the call. And then we have our next large PGS all-provider webinar on December 13th, and as that date gets closer, we will also send an agenda out. But I just wanted you to be aware that because of our regional trainings, we have canceled the September PGS All Provider webinar that we had on our training calendar. That didn't have any direct impact. I'm getting an echo. So I'm wondering. Okay, so I'm gonna just go ahead and mute caller number 6, whoever you are, because I think you're the person who is causing the echo. Perfect. So if that's you and you want to speak, just go ahead and put in the chat box that you need to say something. I'll probably unmute you eventually and see if the echo is still there. So the September All Provider webinar has been canceled. Nobody had registered for it, so it didn't cause any issues. But in case you have that on your calendar, we won't be having it, so you can go ahead and remove it. So I just wanted to do one more announcement about training opportunities. So many of the training opportunities that I just talked about, particularly case training and the family therapy learning sessions and the advanced family therapy, will be ending soon. So Chris Anderson has 2 more webinars on his contract for July and August. And then the family therapy ones, there's 2 more each that last until the end of this calendar. And so we are not going to continue those in the same capacity level. So we're going to be switching to a monthly case consult group that David's going to organize and facilitate, and may also look at others of you facilitating that too. So it's going to have a little bit of different structure, which he's going to talk a little bit more on the August treatment calls, and you'll hear a little bit more about via emails in case you don't attend those calls. David's also going to be sending out a doodle poll in a couple weeks to see what time and days work best for people, not only for the consult group, but also for the monthly treatment calls. Our attendance on these calls always seems to be about the same, which is, 13 people. And we know that this is not the most interactive way to engage with people, but we came to this date over 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And so we just want to put a poll out there and see if there's time that might work better for some of you, and to see if we can accommodate your guys' schedules a little bit better. So just be alert of that will happen. Then I just want to talk to you a little bit about the treatment workforce development committee and the plan that we were coming up with. So for those of you that don't remember or were not familiar, we took the opportunity to assess our current situation and our future needs around workforce development in order for us to build a multi-year workforce development plan, so that we would have more direction and strategic planning around our workforce development opportunities. So we formed a committee, we conducted a survey of our workforce, and then we analyzed that. And we have a plan of recommendations that have been drafted by that committee that came out of the results of the survey. That is currently being reviewed by OHA. And then We are planning on sharing the data that came out from those surveys and the plan at a high level with you at either in a webinar and or at our regional trainings this fall. So you will be getting information back on what came out of that survey and all your efforts, and then what does this plan look like. And then we anticipate having the plan completely drafted into a document with the recommendations by the end of this calendar year. And then after that, then we're going to have to dive into the very details of the recommendations and determine what is actually we're going to implement, and what do we have the funds to implement, and what's the timelines of the different projects that need to be implemented. So that's just an update on that Workforce Development Committee and all the work and effort that you all have put into it, providing us with feedback and helping us with the recommendations. So any questions on any of that stuff? Okay, continuing on. So I'm going to give you a presentation of someone else's presentation, and by no means am I an expert when it comes to fair housing, but I really thought it was important to share this information with you. And by no means do I think that you should be experts on housing, but I know that housing can be an issue for many of the people that we see. And I think it's just really important for us to have a very high level understanding of some of the resources that are available to those that are struggling with finding housing because of criminal backgrounds or bad credit and different things like that. So bear with me, because this is someone else's presentation that I have just copied and stolen with their permission. But so let me go back one. So this is a presentation by Louise Diggs, and she is an education outreach specialist for the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. So when she did this presentation back in April at the Focus on the Future conference, these were the objectives that she was hoping people would meet during that training. And I have taken her training, and actually I've cut it down a little bit because it was far too long for me to share in this webinar, and some of the information I just couldn't do enough justice to keep her slides in. So I've cut it down to the bare bones of what I think is the most important information for you to know, giving you a very high level. So you're probably going to have to seek out a little bit more information from your local housing councils or housing authorities if you want to actually take this information and have a need to use it with your clients or want more information. So I guess what I would do is if you're interested, you might want to have someone from your local area come in and present to you, or go and have a conversation with them. So Louise presented on the fair housing laws. So these are the different federal, state, and local civil rights laws, and they apply to all dwellings. And it really just makes, the real gist of it is it makes it illegal to discriminate against any applicant or resident or treat them differently because of a protected class. So what we're going to really talk about today is, what does protected class mean? So definition of fair housing discrimination is treating a person differently in any housing transaction because that person is a member of a protected class. So by federal protected class is race, color, national origin, religion, gender, familial status, and disability. And what we're going to focus on today is disability. There are also, just so you know, specific protected classes within each state. So Oregon has some additional protected classes too, but I didn't list that within these this presentation, but I just wanted you to know that. So these are the different laws that protect people with a disability, or persons with a disability. This is the definition of a disability. I think we're pretty much all pretty aware of this. And then this is the protected class of disabilities. This is what it includes. It includes an ongoing chronic medical condition. Alcoholics or recovering drug addicts, not current users of illegal drugs. History of a disability. And so we're going to focus today on alcoholics and recovery drug addicts, or our problem gamblers. So this presentation is interesting because she put this slide in here, so I'm including it, that compulsive gambling is not protected under the federal housing. And I forgot what the A stands for. But I had consulted with her personally via email, and she had consulted with the Housing Council Enforcement Director, and that director of Oregon agreed that gambling is considered a disability. It is in the DSM, and it is considered, so it is considered a disability. So that gives us a lot of advantages as we move forward. So since there's kind of a disagreement whether it is and it isn't, I'm going to cover it from the perspective that it is, and then I'm going to cover it from the perspective that maybe it isn't, but here's still how this information can benefit our clients. Okay, so bear in mind that if you do have a disability around alcohol and drug issues, that you have to be in recovery, not currently using an illegal drug. I think we probably all knew that. That's not uncommon to hear. So now we're going to talk about how can you make a request for a reasonable accommodation. So when it comes to people with disabilities, if there is a reason, they might need to request a reasonable accommodation because of their criminal history, because of their credit check, bad credit and different things like that, or bad rental history. They can use their disability to do that and make a reasonable accommodation request. So this can occur during the application process if they're applying for new housing, while they're residing in housing, and even after they receive a notice for eviction. So basically, if you're going to request a reasonable accommodation at your application, you just need to demonstrate what has changed. So what was your barrier, what has changed, and then verification that you have made a change. So as you can see from the slide, applicant can ask for an RA related to rental history. Maybe they were evicted related to their addiction, or maybe they were evicted related to their gambling addiction and the fact that they were not paying their rent on time. They can request one for a credit history because they have poor credit history because of their gambling or their addiction, or they can request it due to their criminal history. So maybe they did have a charge of embezzlement or something like that, or theft due to their gambling. Then that falls under this category. Okay, so if you're going to request a reasonable accommodation, it is advised that you do that in writing. So these are some tricks of the trade for your clients if you're advising them around this. So you need to identify your request as a reasonable accommodation, and we'll get into that later because there's a reasonable accommodation and there's a reason of explanation, I believe, a letter of explanation, and we'll talk about the difference of that later. And you have to state it is related to your disability. However, you are not obligated to state what your disability is. So this is where it gets into, does it really matter if gambling is considered a disability or not? Because basically, and we'll get into that later, so just keep there with me. So what you'll need to do is you have to have verification letters. That is verification that you've completed something, that you've changed, like similar to letters of references or completions of an alcohol and drug treatment program or a gambling program or something like that. So so these are the different things, the rental type barriers that may be related to a disability, and it just lays these out. And basically the bottom just really says the same thing we always said. You need to demonstrate or verify what has shifted or changed so that they know that you're on the upward swing. Provide that verification, but the applicant also still needs to be able to meet requirements of the rental agreement. There is no accommodations around if you can't meet those agreements. This is just basically removing a barrier from you getting into being approved. So verification of disability must be a qualified individual, so that can be you as the gambling counselor, you as the addictions counselor, and then verification does not have, verifier does not have to disclose the type of disability. As you probably all know, you wouldn't do that anyway. And the reason now that I say, does it really matter if gambling is if we don't have to disclose what our disability is, does it really matter if gambling is included or not included? And the reason I say this is because, once again, many of our clients have co-occurring disorders. So they will have an alcohol and drug, and they will probably be treated for that too. When you are providing verification as a verifier, you will be putting it on your agency's letterhead, which does stipulate that you are a mental health or addictions or behavioral health provider, but it doesn't stipulate what type of provider you are. So basically, I did ask Louise this question that if you don't have to ever disclose what your disability is, you just have to prove you have one, and it's proven that you have one by the attendance and verification of an alcohol and drug or mental health facility, then does it really matter if gambling is considered that disability or not? And she said basically no, that nobody would ever know because they can't actually ask. So I believe because their enforcement director said it is a disability, then it is a disability under the Fair Housing Council or Fair Housing Act. However, I'm concerned that if we ever have to get into the weeds of it, maybe different local places might look at it differently, which is fine, because if they do, I do have that documentation and email saying that the enforcement director of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon said it was a disability. So just laying that out for you. So we talked about verification, and so you need that letter from a qualified individual, which is you guys, you're qualified individuals for your clients, a graduation certificate from a program that they've attended. And within that application, just make sure that you clearly state the change in behavior that was related to the disability. And then it says the housing provider can't require someone to use their form. There must be, and what that must mean is that there must be a standard form that across Oregon that must be used. So you'd want to make sure that your applicant is using the standard form so that it's not asking any other questions that should not be addressed. And then this just to explain to you how verification can be delivered. So this is just explaining the screening criteria for a rental application. You guys are probably all aware of this, that housing providers screen for 3 areas: rental history, past landlord references, and evictions. And they do a financial history with the income and the credit, and then the criminal history. So these are the kind of things that you could request that accommodation for. Maybe your rental history doesn't look so good because of the client's gambling, and you've now gone through treatment, you're getting things worked on, you have a credit counseling person that you're working with, that is justification of why your income might look a certain way, or your credit might look a certain way, or you might have some criminal history. So this is the difference between a reasonable accommodation and a letter of explanation. So a reasonable accommodation is that you must have the disability. The barrier must be related to the disability, and you must provide the verification form from the qualified third party. But a letter of explanation is not related to disability. It identifies the barrier and discusses what has changed or shifted, and provides verification of what has shifted. So I'm not totally clear on what the difference of these are, except one is that it's not related to your disability. So we're going to go and provide you with the examples, and so that you have examples of a sample RA request for accommodation format for your application. And then I'm not going to read over this, but this is basically just saying that you're requesting this you're submitting your application and you have identified some barriers, and then you want to specifically state what the barriers are in the shift again, and then you can state that you have the Fair Housing Act on your side, and then they have to you have the ability to ask for the reasonable accommodation, and they have to take that under consideration. Then we have a sample letter of explanation, and yes, basically this is just saying that you don't have a disability. So this is something that if you felt that gambling didn't fall as a disability, then you could use this sample to potentially have things removed, such as, I would like you not to review my credit score, credit history, or something like that in depth, because of these reasons you're going to see this, this, and this, but I am working on it through this, this, and this, and stuff like that. So just as we all know, but still always good to go over, it's always good that your letters be typed, and of course on letterhead if coming from a professional, such as your probation officer, your caseworker, your therapist, your counselor. You need those certificates demonstrating completion of a program, or that you're currently active in a program. And then just the other stuff that you can also submit is verification of employment, and any kind of information around your criminal history and what you've done to remove that barrier or move forward from that. So basically this is going to cover like when you should discuss barriers with a potential landlord, not on the phone. You should always do it after looking at the unit to make sure that it is what you want, and so that you don't have to disclose more information than you need to. And after you review their screening criteria, just to make sure that it's going to work for you, and before you pay your application fee. Just so that you ensure that you don't pay for an application fee and then be rejected and be out that money. So when to say that you have a disability or need a reasonable accommodation, before applying or after. Basically before, you should really just get a sense of how the housing provider's willingness to work with an applicant is, because that could possibly save you your application fee. And then you can potentially build a trust with the housing provider through honesty if you want to have a conversation with them about your disability and the accommodation that you might need. After, you can, if you apply and then you say it after or through your application, you have your application packet for an appeal. You can wait to see if your application is approved without discussing your barriers, but you do have the possibility of losing your application fee, and you do have that application to help with your appeal. But if you are appealing, the housing providers don't have to hold the unit for you. So even if you do make an appeal, that unit may not be available by the time that goes through the process. So there are some benefits of doing it before, and maybe saving yourself some headache and feeling the waters out and seeing if this is really a place that you want to house yourself. So this is just a script to discuss barriers. Once again, I got the impression from Louise that it is very important what kind of language you use in your applications and in your letter, listing your barriers, what it has changed, and then your supporting documentation. So I feel like if you don't have the housing resource people within your community to help your clients with, then this may be something that will be helpful to you to help them write these letters, if you're going to do some type of case management with them, particularly if you're working with your peer mentors. This might be some really good information for them to know to help their clients with those resources in their community. So if a client is denied for housing, the housing provider is required to give the reason for denial if you paid the application fee, and if the client makes that request in writing to learn about the reason for denial. If you were wrongfully denied, then you just should find out what the appeal process is, appeal, and provide the necessary information to correct misinformation, and then contact your Fair Housing Council of Oregon and other fair housing agencies to ensure that you were wrongfully denied and that they can help you with that process, and ensure that the housing provider is more informed on the laws and what is right and what is not right and wrong. So, like I said, this was just a very high-level overview of housing and the fact that gambling disorder may be considered a disability. Alcohol and drug substance use disorder is considered a disability. Many of the mental health diagnoses are considered a disability. So these are, knowing that, we know that that provides us with some helpful resources around maybe our criminal history, our poor credit ratings, and could be past rental history. So, but if you have any questions, I would really recommend that you contact the Fair Housing Council hotline, or your local Fair Housing Council housing advocate, because I think there's a lot of resources out there for some of our clients that we're just unaware of around housing, and we know that housing is such a large issue for our clients. And so I think it's just good information. So now let me see if there are any questions. Okay, still gonna mute caller number 6 though, because I'm getting a lot of background noise. So if that's you and you have a question, chat it up and I will answer you. But otherwise, everyone else is open. This is the end of our webinar today. I finished a whole 20 minutes early, and here I thought it was going to take me forever to get through those slides, and I know I breezed through them really fast because I didn't think I was going to make it through, and a little bit of it, I'll be honest, was because I'm not all that familiar with the subject matter, and I don't want to talk a lot about it because I don't know that much about it. So that was, once again, very high level, but I hope it was informative. So, anybody have any questions? Any updates, anything they want to share, any questions they might have for the group? The phone line is open to you. Oh man, I feel like I've lost all of you. All right, well.
It was, Greta, this is Tina. It was very informative. I appreciated it. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Greta, this is Mary Lane. I appreciated it as well. And also looking forward to having the crew down here in Grants Pass.
Yes, thank you for your assistance in finding a location for that regional training.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful one, and when people show up, I think they'll appreciate it.
They will. I know that those that aren't designated to go to Grants Pass will be very jealous of our beautiful view of the river.
I think so.
But we won't talk about other people's and their locations.
No.
All right. Well, I want to respect your guys' time. So if there isn't any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar for today and let you have some free moments, hopefully, until your next appointment to do whatever it is you need to do. But thank you for attending today. And if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to connect with myself or with David, because he loves to hear from you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you guys have a good rest of the day. And we will talk to you in August, hopefully, if not sooner.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye. Thanks, Greta.